So I think what it all really comes down to at this point for any industry, but also this is something that therapists need to really internalize, is the quality of content that they're putting out, focusing on making a piece very high quality, and not necessarily in the sense that it's this really long, thought out piece, but that it really matches what people want from that keyword.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and this is episode number 320 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. And if this is the first time for you to tune in, glad you're with us. Hope you'll take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. So I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Kristie Plantinga. And Kristie is the person that is behind TherapySCO.com. But what we talk about in this particular episode is just how the landscape is changing around search engines, also the introduction of AI. So we're going to geek out a little bit and talk about the ways in which the digital landscape or the way in which we look for stuff on the internet is changing and how it's affecting what we do as therapists. You know, I've always felt like our number one marketing tool is our website. And I think if you're going to be out there and really use the online landscape as your primary way of marketing, which is a very good one, because I think about in my own practice, overwhelmingly, when I ask people how they found out about us, most all of them say, well, I Googled it or I found you online. And that's how most of our clients, new clients, come to us. So it's so important to understand kind of the workings around all of this stuff just so you can have the knowledge. And, I think there's a lot of people, too, that are maybe a little bit like me, that I consider myself a tinkerer. And so I like to kind of play around with kind of the tech side of things and websites and that kind of thing. And so it's fun for me, but I realize that there are a whole lot of people out there that they really don't enjoy that kind of thing. And so I would say definitely outsource that. But anyway, I think this information is going to be helpful for you in this episode and just all that we talk about and help you kind of get your brain around how the landscape is changing just around SEO and search engines and all of that kind of thing that Kristie and I talk about. Also, before we get to my conversation with Kristie, one of the things that if you're on my email list, you got some emails about this, but one of the things that I'm launching this month, the month of March, in prep for April, is a new membership community that I'm calling the Practice of Therapy Collaborative. And it is a membership community for any folks that are out there that are looking for the extra support and the community around building and growing their practice, whether you're in those beginning stages or whether you're already been around a while and maybe thinking about moving into group practice, or maybe you have a group practice and you're just looking for extra support around the things you're trying to figure out. But what I'd like for you to do is go over to practiceoftherapy.com/practice collaborative, and you can find out more about this membership community. It's going to be much more intensive than I've done in the past with my membership communities. We plan to meet every week, and each week we'll have a little bit different theme in terms of we'll have a 1 week will be just a work day. Another week will be office hours where we can talk and kind of mastermind together. Another week we'll have a guest consultant or a guest person on to teach some things. And then also another week, I'll be teaching some things just around practice building and running a private practice. And so enrollment is open right now, and I'm offering a discount for those that do this early bird enrollment, and you can get $20 off the monthly membership fee. The monthly membership fee is normally $87, but if you will enroll now and use the promo code, just collab24, you can get $20 off your membership fee. Again, if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/practice collaborative, you can find out more about that. And if you're wanting to find out if this is going to be a good fit for you or not, you can always book a discovery call with me, or I'll be glad to talk with you about that to see if it is going to be a good fit for you. But I'm real excited about it and looking forward to getting started the first part of April. And again, go over and check it out and find out more about it. Also, I'd love for you to hear from one of the members of the PsychCraft Network, and along with a word from our sponsor, TherapyNotes.
Hi there, I'm Julie Harris. I'm an accountant, and I'm the host of the Therapy for Your Money podcast. In the podcast, we talk about all things money and finance, specifically for therapists in private practice. You see, my accounting firm, Green Oak Accounting, specializes in working with therapists in private practice. That's all we do at this point. And over the years, we've learned so many tips and tricks for how to make the financial side of private practice work better. After all, we've seen under the hood of hundreds and hundreds of private practices. So in the podcast, I share lots of financial tools and tips and mindset shifts to help you have a profitable private practice. Therapy for Your Money is part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts, a network of independent podcasters just like me. So head over to therapyforyourmoney.com to hear episodes on topics like growing your practice, making more money without necessarily working harder, weathering the ups and downs of a practice, and so much more. Come join me at therapyforyourmoney.com.
Have you ever wished your private practice could run as smoothly as a well-oiled machine? Well, look no further, because TherapyNotes is here to revolutionize your practice. TherapyNotes is the complete practice management system you've been dreaming of. With everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with clients remotely, create rich documentation, and handle insurance billing, it's your secret weapon for a smoother practice. And the best part? It's accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Yep, even on the go. Imagine having more time for what truly matters, your clients. It's like having an extra set of hands, but digital. And here's the kicker. It's the very EHR Gordon relies on in his own practice. So, you know it's the real deal. Say goodbye to paperwork nightmares and hello to more time and better quality care. Check out TherapyNotes today at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Oh, and don't forget to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. That's practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes with the promo code GORDON. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm happy for you to get to know today Kristie Plantinga. Hi, Kristie. How glad you're here.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting topic for folks just thinking about Google and SEO and AI and all of that. And so as I start with everyone, Kristie, why don't you tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Yeah. So years ago, even before college, I think as many
Mm-hmm.
of the listeners can relate to, I'm sure, I was in the you're a good listener, old soul to therapist pipeline. So I was
Mm-hmm.
definitely headed down that path. That's what I studied in college, fully my intention to go down that route. But in the last semester, I just didn't feel like I was ready to help anyone, to be totally honest. And I think I lost some of the excitement I had for the field, but I've always had a passion for mental health. Obviously, that hasn't gone away. So I took some time off, kind of figuring out what's next after, I thought that I was going in this direction. And I stumbled upon writing and marketing and website design. So I started working in the field, was working at an SEO agency specifically at the time. I caught the entrepreneurial bug, as listeners, I'm sure, did
Mm-hmm.
as well. And I knew that I didn't want to be a generalist. I wanted to work with, a certain population. And, after a second of thought, it was therapists, of course. This is, I was just so sure that this is exactly the spot that I was meant to be in to connect the skills, that I developed with the passion that I have for the field. So 2019, I started therapy SEO, and SEO as a field has grown so much even since when I started in the therapy world. So SEO for therapists, according to some of my SEO tools, was searched, I think, 40 times a month. And now it's over
Mm-hmm.
150, just in the
Wow.
last couple
Mm-hmm.
years. So it's absolutely exploded, which is great. I'm really happy that therapists are taking advantage of search engines as a tool to market their practice. But yeah, here now we're
Mm-hmm.
more, full spectrum kind of marketing agency with websites and Google ads, but we got our start in SEO.
Yeah. Yeah. I know as we were talking before we started recording, you're noticing some changes in Google, and particularly with it's just causing things to change pretty rapidly. I think just it's interesting because I'm sure you're familiar with it. Canva, I've been using Canva a lot with
Mm-hmm.
helping a friend, build their e-commerce site, and getting their graphics and stuff with that. It's got an AI feature now, which is just incredible to produce stuff. But anyway, as we chatted, what are the trends that you're seeing and what is it that you are noticing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everyone has experienced it at some point with the tools that they use in their business. For a lot of them, they have this kind of AI component or AI add-on. And I think, it's changing society at large. So, of course, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
affect digital marketing. So, I think a few years ago when I started, there are a lot of little kinds of tricks that SEO professionals use that I was doing at the time. And they're not unethical by any means, but they were more kind of technical than they were necessarily about, the quality of a website or, even really good link building, which I can get into a little bit. So essentially, on Google alone, the standards are rising. So I think therapists could get away with a little bit less in the last few years because, again, 40 searches, 250 searches per month, obviously the competition has risen. So this is a
Mm-hmm.
huge driving factor, in how SEO is done. And I think Google's just making a lot of changes to what the search engine results look like because I think for a long time, Google didn't really have a competitor. They were kind of the only option for people or the only one that people knew about when they were trying to get information online. But people can use ChatGPT now, right? And you can ask
Mm-hmm.
for trip itineraries or restaurant recommendations. People are also using TikTok, as a search engine now too. So
Mm-hmm.
the the way that people are even searching is changing. And so Google is, of
Mm-hmm.
course, panicking a little bit and being like, I make all my
Mm-hmm.
money from Google Ads. So how am I going to
Right.
make my search engine still really compelling? And Google has used AI in their search engine results since like 2015, I think. But now, because the technology has improved so rapidly, I think they're playing catch up a little bit. So I think what it all really comes down to at this point for any industry, but also this is something that therapists need to really internalize, is the quality of content that they're putting out. There's definitely none of this, 500-word blog post because someone said that you should post a blog post once a week. It's not going to help you. Instead, focusing on making a piece very high quality, and not necessarily in the sense that it's this really long, thought out piece, but that it really matches what people want from that keyword. So thinking a little bit more critically instead of, do I have trauma quiz? Instead of writing this whole thing, make a quiz, so people can just jump to it and take it. So I think being more thoughtful and creative with the type of content we're putting out, whether that be AI assisted Canva graphics or even AI assisted video, I'm seeing more of using ChatGPT to build HTML tables, like all this really creative, which is a little bit more advanced. So it'll take some skill building, So that's, I think, the first part. And then the second part's more about link building. But I don't know if you want to maybe discuss.
Yeah, I think that would be important for people to hear, and certainly something I'm fascinated by. So maybe tell folks a little bit what you mean by the link building and what you're learning.
Yeah. So we're kind of doing the shift in the services that we're offering away from more of those kind of tips and tricks, like I was talking about a few years ago. And now we're doing a lot more services that focus on the individual reputation of a therapist. So there's this acronym EEAT, stands for experience, expertise, authority, and trust. And there's certain signals that Google understands that communicates those things to them. Really high quality content, within the content talking about your specific experience with certain things. So not, these are the forms of trauma therapy that work well. It's in my experience, these are the ones that I start with. These are the ones that I'll shift if it's not working, being really personal with the stuff that you're pointing out, because that content is unique. Other journalists who are, not mental health professionals, but they, talk about this stuff in the field, they get paid by, Very Well Mind or whoever, just to kind of put out this blog content. They can't compete with a therapist in terms of experience, right? So really leaning into that expertise, choose a niche. I think that's so really powerful. Even if you see different types, choose a niche. So even if you see different types of clients, focusing on one to really market yourself with, I think is the key. Lots of therapists like to see different types of people, but to start making a name for yourself, showing Google that, you have that expertise, choose something specific to market yourself with. Authority, getting your name featured on, major publications. That's essentially PR, public relations. So that's almost replaced link building. There's just kind of public relations, I think, is a better way to think about it. And then trust. And trust takes time to build, right? You can't kind of splash onto the scene and expect Google to trust you and your website in a month. That often takes time, but doing all those other things builds up that trust with Google. So if someone needed a framework, that EEAT, that is the direction that I would point people to.
Right. Yeah. It's one of the things that I've learned in just building and being involved in building my own website for my practice. And then also for this podcast, the practice of therapy, it's really figuring out what are the search terms that people are going to use. And, how do they, if they're trying to solve a problem, how do they think about it in their head and how would they type it in? And that's, maybe AI can help with that because it, it's learning itself all along. Yeah.
Yeah. It's based on feedback, right? So, and I think we'll see, I don't know if you've messed around with ChatGPT at all. Have you?
Oh yeah. Use it about every day.
Right?
Yeah. Use it about every day. Yeah.
Yeah, you have that interaction with it and you can tell it what's working and what's not. So in the future, I think we're going to see, and I've seen it a little bit on Google. It's definitely more present on Bing because Microsoft is an investor in OpenAI, which is, the creator of ChatGPT. it'll ask for feedback on the search engine results page. So that could be a good thing if you're being more creative and you're really taking the time to think, is this what people want when they are searching for this? That could be beneficial to you, or it could be the opposite if, like this wasn't helpful at all, really. Like I could have gotten this information somewhere else, wasn't very unique. I should have checked Reddit. I should have checked TikTok. This is something to think about, is how you can really create the best piece of content for something. Google's certainly favoring the larger companies now, unfortunately, but I think really good content and building up your personal reputation online can still land you where you want to be on Google, but it just takes more effort now than it has in the past.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff because it is changing. I mean, it used to be that, like you said, you'd pump out a bunch of blocks and get that out there, and that would help boost your SEO and having the backlinks and the internal links and all of those kinds of things, which I guess are still important, aren't they?
Yeah. I don't think that stuff has gone away, but I think it's kind of taking a different form, so obviously still blog, that's important. Internally link throughout your site, absolutely. I think what's probably changed the most of those three categories, in terms of what I've been trying to do, has been the link building. And really that's just been this switch to a PR kind of focus, because that's the stuff that really stands out. That's the stuff that is more difficult to secure, right? So when Google wants to see who's the best of the best to rank for this keyword, it's like, well, this therapist has been featured on HuffPost, New York Times, Forbes. I think I want them farther up than this other person who really doesn't have anyone, verifying them in that way. Because like a backlink is essentially social proof, but on Google, like that's really how that is. So if you don't have any really high quality social proof and your competitor does, we all know how that's going to turn out. So.
Right. Yeah. So as we move forward with AI, what are maybe some tips you can give around the best use of that and how we can use it to our advantage to help market our practices and also, just get our rankings up with this SEO?
Yeah. And I think this is the same advice I would give anyone who's wondering where AI really fits into their life, even because I do think it's, it's taking the world by storm. And I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon. It's advancing so rapidly. I think in 3 years, we'll look back and laugh at how limited it was now.
Yeah.
I really believe that. So I think the people who are going to come out on top in terms of how they use AI are going to be the people who really treat it like a robot. What can this tool automate to free up my mind for more advanced things? Right. Yeah. So if you're writing a blog post and in this blog post, you want to quick address the symptoms of anxiety, don't write those by, offhand. Like you don't need to obviously verify anything ChatGPT spits out. You can just quick say, what are the, major symptoms of anxiety? It'll tell you, you can paste it, reword it a bit, and you're good to go. So anything you feel comfortable kind of offloading, to a robot, quote unquote, I think that's the kind of thing. It's really just freeing up your mental energy and your creativity to do more advanced things, I think is where people are going to experience the most benefit from.
Right. Yeah. And as you said with Chat GPT, you need to go in and clean it up and make sure it makes sense and that the stuff that's cited there is accurate and that kind of thing. So, Well, Kristie, what are the other things that you are working on and really feel are important right now, given kind of the environment with AI and all of that?
Yeah, I think I've just been doing so much thinking on what's going to actually work for therapists now, because I think, especially, in the digital marketing world, don't just anticipate change, expect it. count on it,
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Mm-hmm.
This is if you're doing digital marketing, it will
Mm-hmm.
change. So you need to prepare for that, I think, logistically, but also kind of mentally. So definitely trying to encourage my audience and my clients to build up a little bit of the fortitude, that this is the stress you kind of took on when you started your practice. So
Mm-hmm.
you're doing digital marketing, and you don't have to, like there are other forms of marketing. But if you're doing this is kind of what you have to prepare for. But I think in the future, I know that certain things aren't going away. One, I think, is Google Ads. I think that will become a more and more valuable service for
Mm-hmm.
therapists. It's definitely more expensive than SEO in the short or in the long term. Absolutely. But we know that it's not going away because that's how Google, one of the biggest companies in the world, is making money, right? They're going
Yeah.
to be very, very protective of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that going away. Obviously, there's still value to building up your network, I think is a really big one. I do think SEO, but I would say it is not for as many people as it used to be
Mm-hmm.
because it's more challenging. It takes a lot more grit, it takes a lot more time, it takes more
Mm-hmm.
efforts, it takes more resources. And if you're not, up for that, that's totally okay. But just, yeah, think twice before you take it on. I still really believe in it, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's really frustrating for some people at
Yeah.
this point.
Right. Right. And I think well, part of what you're speaking to is don't be afraid to outsource those tasks, because I've learned so many times the hard way is that I got jump into something thinking, oh, I can learn how to do this. And I,
Mm-hmm.
end up spending just an inordinate amount of time to where my time could have been better used in other ways. And that's when you
Mm,
need to outsource. Yeah.
yeah. And I think relying on professionals, but also making sure that they're offering you up to date services. I
Yeah.
think that is more important than ever because, yeah, I don't think all companies do seriously audit their services because they're like, oh, it's selling, but is it
Mm-hmm.
actually working still? That's a whole other question. So I'm definitely with you on relying on professionals, even if it is, coaching or classes or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but just make sure that that information is up to date. And I still think directories are a really good way to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons we started one, Best Therapists,
Mm-hmm.
because, me and my team, we saw this kind of division that we're seeing, I think, also in the real world in
Mm-hmm.
society where the people who have more, the bigger companies, the mental health directories, they have more resources. They're going to start doing better on Google. Smaller businesses with less, they're going to struggle a bit more. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
been this whole existential crisis, amongst my team and stuff, but that's the way it's going, which is why, again, I don't advise it for everyone. So we were thinking, how can someone get the same effect, like of being on Google in the sense that someone is seeing their face when they're on
Mm-hmm.
the first page of Google, but then they don't have to put in all that time and the effort. And instead, we would have done that once for a bunch of people. So again,
Mm-hmm.
I like ran smack dab into a directory. Nothing novel, but
Right.
we do is we only feature 3 to 6 therapists on a page. So instead of
Mm-hmm.
this like huge thousands of people shuffled randomized results, you can, have confidence that this is where you're showing up.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the
Right.
direction that we're taking with that. And it's definitely not what everyone else is doing. And it's more selective. But I think that this is one of those things that therapists can still count on is directories. Just I think doing audit of like which one is working. If you're making an ROI once a quarter, probably worth staying on. So I think those are the ones that I would continue to,
Yeah.
really with even with all these changes with AI, those,
Yeah.
4 things I think I mentioned are
Yeah.
a good way to go. And social media, like TikTok and stuff. But
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think for me, the big take home point there is just simply know where your referrals are coming from
mhm.
and being able to track that in a meaningful way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And then put your, once you figure that out, is then put your efforts into building out on whatever platform that is, because you know that it's kind of to some degree has been validated already.
Yeah, I think double down on what's working. It's like how in the stock market, investors will often invest more when things are down. I think that's an opportunity for therapists where maybe it's, a down season right now in therapy a bit, but we know it's going to go back up, right? So
Right.
double down on what's working. And not just maybe with, time and money, but also innovating. Maybe don't keep doing the same thing you've been doing. Maybe other accounts that you feel are more kind of advanced in these things and try some of the things that they're doing. So I think getting creative is really, those are the people that are going to continue to benefit, because if you don't have a big budget, like some of these huge, mental health apps, you can still make it, but you just have to be like a little smarter, a little more detailed than they probably can be.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it does. Kind of giving more of a personal touch with people.
Yep, the experience. The first E of the EEAT.
Very true. Well, Kristie, I have to be respectful of your time. What sort of closing thoughts would you have around this topic?
Yeah, I know it's such a big topic, but I think the recommendation that I'm giving a lot of, therapists and coaches, consultants at this time is just be very honest with yourself about what you feel like you can take on. And that knowing that part of that decision is what amount of turbulence am I tolerant of? Not just today, 5 years. If you invest in digital marketing, like I said before, don't, expect change, count on it. And some platforms are just more turbulent than others. So if that's something that you really struggle with, maybe think about doing something that's a little bit more predictable, which might be more expensive, like Google Ads. Social media can be free in many ways for therapists. Google Ads is not, but we know that it's not going anywhere. And we know that it hasn't changed that much in the last 5 years. So yeah, I think those are the recommendation. The main thing that I would like people to reflect on is how much am I willing to take on in this space, knowing that it is possible, absolutely. But are certain things the right thing for me?
Right. Yeah, I love that advice. So, well, Kristie, tell folks how they can get in touch with you and find out more about what you're doing and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So you can just head to my website, therapyseo.com. We have a blog if you want to start learning this stuff on your own. You can learn more about our services, what we're offering at this time. And you can check out the directory that we're working on, besttherapist.com. Learn more about the verification process we have, what the site looks like in comparison to other directories. Those are the two main ways right now.
All right. Well, we'll have some links in the show notes and that sort of thing to help people connect with you, Kristie. I really enjoyed our conversation, and the future is going to be different. Well, again, a big thanks to Kristie for joining me on the podcast. And I hope you enjoyed listening in on that conversation and just kind of our thoughts around just the changing landscape of the internet and search engines and how people search for things and the effect that AI is going to have on just everything that we do moving forward. And be sure and check out the things that Kristie has to offer. You'll find links here in the show notes and the show summary, in particular with this new directory that she's got started. I think it's going to be a good addition to our profession. So be sure and check it out. Again, you can go to Practice of Therapy /best therapist. And that's just a quick link to get to the website that Kristie's got set up for this new directory. So be sure and check it out. And also, I'd love for you to find out more about the Practice of Therapy Collaborative that is going to launch in April. And enrollment is open right now. And I'd love for you to join me and become part of this community. And you can find out more about it by going to practiceoftherapy.com/practice collaborative. And be sure and use the promo code just collab24, and that way you can get $20 off your monthly membership through March 15th. That deal will close on March 15th. So go ahead and take advantage of it now while you have the chance. And also a big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice and absolutely could not work without them. So be sure and check them out by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes, and be sure and use the promo code just Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So again, thanks folks for joining me with the podcast or listening to the podcast, and do take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And looking forward to being with you again next week with some other great guests. Got a lot of great people lined up, so stay tuned. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.